All right, so I've been reading a ton about the early NBA lately with this whole 57 Tops project. And while George Mikan's not in that set, he more or less helped lay the foundation for everything moving forward. He's a big reason why we have the 24-second shot clock. The lane was made wider because of him, and then, of course, later on they did the same for Wilt as well. But reading about Mikan has just been fascinating to me. So, over the course of the last year, I picked up a handful of nice Mikan cards to add to the ones I already had. You guys know I've done ranked lists before. I've had a lot of fun with those, so I thought it might be worth trying to rank my 10 favorite Mikans as well. So without further ado, let's jump right in to number 10, which is the only ultra modern card on the list that doesn't have any sort of relic in it, and it is a 2012-2013 Panini Prism Silver. And technically, these are listed as Prism Prisms, but I don't know a single person that calls them that. In fact, Panini themselves pivoted and started calling them Silvers back in 2015. And truth be told, I wasn't a huge fan of 2012 Prism when it first came out. I opened my one hobby box and I felt like that was enough. But it's certainly grown on me over the years. And while it's not my favorite Prism release, the fact that it's the first makes it important in my eyes. And on top of that, the parallels are pretty limited too. The consensus is that the 2012 Silvers, that there are less than 200 copies for each player. I think 180 is the most common projection I've seen. So ultimately, this is a nice looking limited card from an iconic release. One of my friends picked this up at a show sometime in the last year, and thankfully I was able to trade for it and add it to my PC. All right, next up is a pretty obscure piece from Mikan's playing days. It is a 1948 Kellogg's Pep card, which is a multi-sport release. And not surprising, Mikan was the lone basketball player in the set. I've mentioned several times before that I'd like to own a 48 Bowman rookie. That's probably not going to happen, but this is one of two cards on this list that I feel are adequate replacements because they came from the same year. And interestingly enough, all three of these were distributed in different ways. As you might guess from the name Kellogg's, this one was packed inside of boxes of cereal. Kellogg's Pep was a wheat cereal that competed with Wheaties at the time. And while Wheaties ultimately won the bland cereal war, Pep beat them to the punch for Mikan cards by several years. So that might be a little foreshadowing to something you'll hear about in a moment here. But my copy of this Pep card is slabbed as PSA Authentic Altered. And I can't tell exactly what's wrong with it, but I think somebody hacked one of the sides up at one point. And in this case, it really doesn't bother me, seeing as that is disclosed. Okay, number 8 is a 1996-97 Topps Finest reprint refractor. This was a 50-card set that was released in conjunction with the league's 50th anniversary. And Topps actually did quite a bit of nice 50th stuff that year. According to Trading Card Database, half of the set was packed out in Series 1 of Topps Stadium Club, and then the other half ended up in Series 2 of Topps. And Mikan was in the Topps version, and the odds for those were 1 in every 144 packs. And in most cases, these were reprints of the player's primary rookie card. And such was the case here with the Mikan. For the players that had rookies in 61 Fleer, they used their first Topps card instead. So, like West and Wilder from 1969, Sam Jones retired before the 69 set came out, so they actually created a 69 Topps style card just for him that didn't exist before. I thought it was interesting, Bird and Magic are on the same rookie card. Well, they had two versions of that same card, just with different numbering. Most of the 86 Fleer guys, including Michael Jordan, had reprints of their Star Company cards. I don't know the specifics, but apparently Topps made arrangements for that license. But as with most refractors from this era, really anything pre-1998, there are major greening issues with this set, and it looks a lot worse on some players than others. I feel like Maravich is the absolute worst I've seen, and a lot of the Mikans don't look all that great either. The centering on my Mikan copy isn't all that great, but the greening isn't that bad, and that was kind of what I prioritized. It's just hard to find an affordable copy where both attributes are just right, so I'm happy with this one here. I'll probably leave it at that. I don't think I'm going to look for another copy anytime soon. Okay, next up is a pair of cards from the 1952 Wheaties set. And yeah, they're two different cards, but I'm kind of going to count them as the same card here, or the same entry. This was a 60-card multi-sport set that included an action shot and then a portrait for 30 different subjects. And while Mikan was the only basketball player in the 51 set, he was one of 3 players in the 52 release, and the other 2 were Jim Pollard and Bob Davies. As you might expect, this is a serial set. These were cut from cereal boxes. I've seen a few uncut versions come up for sale on auction, and they've had all 7 cards on the back and then 3 on a side panel, so there were 10 cards per box. And that's a lot different than the 51 set. I'll talk about that a little more here in a moment here, but where you had 1 card at a time on the individual size boxes. So understandably, the 52 cards were a little smaller. One other major note about these, the portrait version features the same picture as a 51 card, and it would have been nice if they could have changed things up, but at the same time, how many Mikan portraits were out there, or how many did they really have access to? So either way, I think these are a must-have for any Mikan fan. They're pretty easy to find, they're affordable, and they were released while he was still an active player, so definitely something worth pursuing. Okay, number 6 is probably the largest Mikan relic that's out there. It's the largest one that I know of, at least, and it is a 2012-2013 Panini Immaculate Standard Jumbo Relic, and my copy is numbered 30 out of 50. This is a set that's been part of Immaculate from year 1, and some years the pieces have been more limited than others. Like one year I think they were pretty much numbered to 10. I really like 2012 though, because there were quite a few of them that chase. They had a horizontal design that really showcased the relic pieces, and then the cards were finished with an acetate surface. And yeah, that made them a little more prone to scratching, but I thought it made them look just really nice overall. And I have looked high and low to try and find the source material for this jersey. From some of the tag cards that have come out, we know it was originally produced by a Minneapolis store called Corey's, but I haven't seen any auctions for Mikan jerseys in that 2012 era. So now, that doesn't mean I have any doubts about the provenance, but it would be nice to be able to match them up. There aren't a lot of prime pieces for Mikan, so to get a large piece of a jersey, even that's pretty special. And thankfully, I was able to grab this one a long time ago. Like many other things, they have since shot up, and they really aren't making Mikan relics anymore either. So I'd be curious to know if they have any of this material left. Maybe we'll find this out in the next year or so if there's any sort of relic purge, although I'm not sure that's going to happen, but who knows. All right, number 5. Next up on the list, it is a 1951 Wheaties card in an SGC Authentic slab. And like the 52 version I talked about earlier, these were cut from cereal boxes. The 51 version, though, is larger because it was cut from the individual size boxes. I'd never owned one before this, so I didn't realize that they had like a wax coat on the surface. And I thought mine might even be an error when I got it. I said, something about that doesn't seem right. But I looked them up, and Beckett says they all have that similar surface. Now, unlike the 52 set, Mikan is the only basketball player in this release. And this one showed up on my Save Search list earlier this year for like $37 shipped. So that was an instant buy it now for me. All right, card number 4 is from a set called 1948-49 Sports Champions Exhibits. And this was an oversized multi-sport set that, according to Beckett, was released to go along with the 1948 Olympics. These were originally distributed in vending machines in places like amusement parks and arcades, and it was a chance for business owners to try and collect more of the pennies and nickels from people that were walking around. With that being said, they didn't pump a lot of money into the production of these things. They didn't buy any of the league or team licenses, so you just had, Mikan wearing his 99 jersey here, and then generally there's just nothing printed on the backs. Like the Kellogg's Pep that I talked about before, though, I consider this to be a worthwhile Mikan rookie alternative, and I actually like this one a lot better than the Pep because the Pep is just a headshot. I got my copy for $11. And even though it does have some major paper loss on it, you're not going to find them that cheap anymore, even if one's in similar condition. But no matter how much you find them for, it still should be a much cheaper alternative to the 48 Bowman, and I think it presents pretty well. All right, speaking of the 48 Bowman, the next card kind of resembles that card. It is a 1996-97 Top Stars reprint auto. And just to clarify, the card is a reprint, the auto is not. This is part of a 10-card set that Topps put out for the NBA's 50th anniversary, and according to Beckett, these were inserted in Topps Stars retail boxes, and you could also find one of these autos in the Topps box sets that year, which were shaped like gold bars. Now, this is one I've had my eye on for a couple years now. One of my friends, Darren, had this copy with him at the 2023 National. We talked about it a little, but he wasn't quite ready to move it. Fast forward to 2024, I was headed to the Summer Dallas show and had told some of my friends that my main goal was to find a Mikan auto. I had forgotten that Darren had one, and one night we went out to eat and he said, "Are you still interested in that Mikan auto?" Little did he know that was my main goal for the show. So the next day we sat down and we were able to work out a deal for it pretty quick. Mikan has a handful of certified on-card autos, but this ranks near the top for me. The only one that probably beats it is one where he inscribed it Mr. Basketball, and those have really just exploded in value over the years. So I'm fine with this one, and like I said, it's got a fun acquisition story too. Okay, next up is one that I have talked about recently, but that doesn't change the fact that it's high on this list here. It is a 1950 Japanese Minko card of George Mikan in a BGS 2.5 slab. And this was a fun acquisition for me because it prompted me to look more into Minko cards. You know, what are they? Where did they come from? I'd heard of them before because I actually bought a Mickey Mouse Minko at a card show a couple years ago. And that one looked like a tobacco card. I didn't really know what it was, but it was Mickey and it was terrifying, so I bought it. This Mikan, though, is shaped like a disc, and I did some reading. Apparently, these were part of a Japanese game that's kind of like Pogs. And if you aren't familiar with Pogs, it was a game where you stack discs and you hit them with a slammer, and then you'd collect the pieces that had flipped over. Well, with this Minko game, you kind of throw the pieces on top of the other ones that are spread out with the hopes of flipping them over, and then similar to Pogs, you can play for keeps. To be honest, it's pretty shocking to me that they made one for George Mikan, seeing as the subject matter generally reflected pop culture at the time, so you had a lot of cartoon characters. I've also heard people say there were a lot of planes and tanks around World War II, and yet Mikan was featured as part of this game in Japan at a time when pro basketball wasn't even popular in the States. That's pretty remarkable to me. I've seen one other basketball Minko, but it was pretty generic. Mikan's the only specific player I've seen that was used, and that tells me, you know what, maybe his reach extended far beyond what we give credit for, or maybe the designer of the game just had a thing for American sports. Who knows? But either way, there's not a lot of Mikan stuff out there for his playing days. I think there is a rare yellow variation, but I don't plan on ponying up for that one anytime soon. This one cost me enough, but it was worth it. And as you can see, it ranks pretty high on the list. All right, number one. We'll do the grand reveal here. It is a 2014-2015 Panini National Treasures Timelines Prime Relic, numbered 9 of 10. And I've talked about Mikan Relic some already when I got through the Immaculate Standard card. You might remember that I mentioned his Prime Relics are super scarce. Well, on top of that, most of the ones that are out there are really small, with the exception of these 10 copies. So like I said before, I haven't tracked down the exact source material, but it looks like it's from the trim portion from either the neck or the arm area of a jersey. I suppose it could also be from the cuff of a jacket or maybe a waistband on a pair of shorts, but all the clues kind of indicate that a jersey is the source material. I purchased this copy all the way back in the summer of 2017, and I've really enjoyed having it in my Hall of Fame collection. I think it survived all 3 iterations of a very Pacers-heavy top 50 cards list, and now here it is. It sits at number 1 on my list of favorite Mikan cards as well. All right, so there you have it. I can't emphasize enough that Mikan played a crucial role in the development and the advancement of the early NBA. I had a lot of fun piecing this list together for you, and I hope you guys enjoyed hearing about those cards as well. So remember, there are new episodes of the audio podcast that come out every Thursday, and as always, thanks for watching.